Hi everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and we are back again to do my favorite thing in the world, which is to talk about a Star Trek book. Here you can see in my hand, currently trying to beam away, is the fourth book in the six-book Double Helix saga. And the Double Helix saga, if you've been following along, has been a plethora of surprises. Each book has come out and surprised me one way or another. This one, it was a bit of a surprise for me because I don't read anything on the book before I start. So I looked at the picture and I'm like, okay, we've got a Will Riker book. But from the cover here, Tom Riker joins forces with the Maquis to save a world in peril. This is, of course, the 54th book in the TNG numbered series. This is written by John Vornholt, who has written a number of very fun Trek books. And this is an interesting story, basically, if you wanted to see how Tom Riker kind of got himself into the Maquis, which is a great DS9 episode, The Defiant. This is kind of the intro to that. So, very cool there. And, for my part, I would have liked to have seen more of a focus on Tom Riker. But that's just me, That's just me being a big Riker fan. But it covers a lot of, you get Chakotay, and of course you get B'Elanna here, and you get to see them, pre-Voyager, which is cool, so I did enjoy that very much. And the story, again, this Double Helix story has kind of been this overarching experiment almost, where each book, this shadowy villain in the background has been unleashing a terrible virus upon some sort of population, right? And it's typically been targeted at like mixed species people and things like that. So in this book, it's the same story. He or she has unleashed some other dastardly virus, and the Maquis is the one who has to come in and help. So let's read from the back of the book here. Like intertwining filaments of human and alien DNA, a ruthless campaign of revenge has threaded its way through the galaxy, touching billions of sentient beings and changing forever the life of Lieutenant Thomas Riker. Star Trek The Next Generation Double Helix. Quarantine. Tom Riker, an identical duplicate of the Starship Enterprise's first officer, is serving as a Starfleet medical courier when he encounters a group of Maquis renegades, led by a former Starfleet officer named Chakotay. A planet in the demilitarized zone, now controlled by the Cardassians, has been stricken with the same deadly disease that has plagued the Alpha Quadrant for years, and only Riker can get the medical supplies the Maquis so desperately need. But the Cardassians would rather destroy all life on the planet than risk letting the epidemic spread. Bum, bum, bum. Sounds good, right? And again, it was fun for me to go in just thinking that this was a Will Riker book, and then, oh my gosh, it's Tom Riker. You were wrong. You should have read. But no, I shouldn't have read, because it's funner, again, to go in spoiler-free. So, and again, this book has a lot going on. So they start the book out basically with kind of showing Riker maybe kind of getting fed up with where he's currently is in the system. So he wants to move on and try kind of something else, which gets him to put on the medical blue, and like it says on the back, become a medical courier. And it's in this way that's how he, meets up and, begins his adventure. And then, of course, it gives you the other side of the story, showing you how Chakotay and B'Elanna, get their ship and get into their part of the story. So overall, it was interesting. It was a very interesting book. It was not really the same, I guess, as the other ones, where I felt that the focus was less on the virus, and kind of like trying to solve that, where a lot of the other ones had a very like medical focus on like the doctor trying to find the cure for it. This one was different. It was more just them trying to do what they can. They had medical teams providing relief on the planet, so they were trying to do what they can. But they didn't have, like, one super advanced doctor who was going to come and find the cure. Like in the previous books, you had Pulaski, you had Dr. Crusher, and, on and on. doing that. So with this one, you kind of have this fun little adventure story with the Maquis coming in. They've got to hide from the Cardassians. There's a... The people of this planet, too, are very interesting. They are almost like genetically engineering themselves to be, you know, like the best that they can be by, like, mixing different species and races together. And it's for that reason that they are, like, completely taken with B'Elanna when she comes down. So the prefect of the continent that they're on, he's very taken with her. So you have a little bit of, like, kind of the story there of what's going on between them, is that she's trying to figure out what exactly is really going on the planet, right? There are basically different continents, and the infection is in some places but not in others, so they're kind of questioning, you know, is there something going on? And then there's this medical group basically called IGI, and they're the ones who kind of are in charge of the genetic engineering of these people and arranging, you know, how they have their children and all that. And then they come in and they play kind of a big part in that as well, too. So, again, it kind of goes all over the place. And I could have used so much more Tom Riker in it. But, again, that's not the book that was written. This was a Tom Riker Maquis story. So while you do get some fun stuff for Tom Riker, you know, you also have to go back and get the other stuff with the rest of the Maquis. So, all right, let's get into, and I've not even looked at this yet, so this is all new here just for me. Come here. We've got the amazing book about books here. So we're going to look up now, heading to the index to look up Quarantine, and we'll see if John Vornholt gave any inside information here on the writing of this book. So this is a wonderful resource to have if you are going through and reading any Trek books. You can get your little inside look here, and there is indeed a good bit of stuff here. From the mouth of the author. This has to be the grimmest Trek novel I've ever written, because it's about a planet dying from a horrible plague. Readers of the Double Helix series know that the plot wove through 6 novels, but number 4 was a tough one in the series to do. In the overall plot, it was the low ebb with the bad guys winning. Yeah, I guess that's really true, right? Yeah. The Maquis came in and they did what they could, but they couldn't cure it. All they could do is, you know, help them as best they can. I couldn't advance the plot much, and I couldn't reveal any secrets or conclude anything either. So, you know, I guess that makes perfect sense. So I went with angst and atmosphere. Imagine Trek meets Kafka. I really enjoyed using the Maquis members of Voyager crew before their contact with Voyager. Captain Chakotay, Tuvok, etc. were a fine crew to work with, and the futility and grimness of the story left them prepared for the big change that was coming in their lives. Wow. Yeah. You know, I didn't even really look at it that way, to be honest with you. But it's true. It was definitely a losing battle the whole time. And all they could do was basically save as many as they can, you know? But they couldn't do anything for the most of the population, which was already affected and had been affected for too long for them to be able to do anything. So and that's, you know, having to write a piece of a saga, but then also not be able to advance the saga anymore. That kind of stinks for John Vornholt too, right? It seems like some of the other stories, they were able to give a little bit of the background of the villain, or, you know, a chapter or two would kind of go into that. So, but anyway, let's get into talking about the story a little bit more here. I took some notes, not the best notes, and actually I didn't even notate when I finished, which was last night, the 2nd of June. So this book I started on May 19th of this year, finished it last night, the 2nd of June. This book was 259 pages. I could have read it a lot faster, but there was a lot going on in these past 2 weeks. end of school activities, things going on, just, a variety of things. So we were not able to burn through it quickly, but summer vacation has begun. So I'm hoping with that we'll be able to devote, a little bit more time, to getting into these books a little bit deeper. So, all right. So the book, like I said, starts out with Chakotay and B'Elanna getting their ship, which is a Peregrine class ship called the Spartacus. And you've got, of course, other members of the crew here as well. You've got Tuvok, you've got Seska, and it's interesting too. There are some asides to the Cardassians that are kind of in the in control of that area where the planet's at, and these guys make a comment about how they're not too worried about that Maquis ship because they have someone on board. Seska. So anyway, and Tuvok, it's always great to see early Tuvok. It was always an interesting situation, right? A Vulcan Maquis. So just very cool. And I wonder if there's more that covers that period, right? Because I would like to know, like, more about kind of what went on, how he, got himself in with the crew, right? But anyway, the story then goes to Tom Riker, who is currently serving aboard, I think a Galaxy-class ship, I forget, and I didn't write it down. But he's kind of being, I think people are comparing him to Will Riker, so the current XO is like riding him real hard, thinking that he's gunning for her job, but he's not Will Riker. He's Tom Riker, and he's different. And I could do a whole show about that, right? Second Chances is a fantastic episode, and if you just sit down and think about it too, it's crazy, right? So you have the character of Will Riker, right? And then you take him and you leave him alone for 8 years, right? And then out comes this same but completely different character. And I know it's like, I guess they didn't want to develop the twin thing more, and that's why they really didn't push it. But man, a lot more I think could have been done with that. But that is definitely a topic for another day. So anyway, he decides to get out from under her thumb, transfers to medical. And right now what they need in medical is basically a courier. So he's going to be driving the shuttlecraft, taking the doctors and supplies into the the DMZ or these stations or wherever they need to go, right? So they get there, they make their first delivery, and he has a partner, an ensign Sells. Man, I don't think I wrote that down right. Selzane. Yes, Selzane. I did write it down right. And she is a Benzite. And if you remember, the Benzites were the blue alien species, represented, I think, Mordok in TNG. Anyway, he has the breathing thing over his face. Ensign Selzane, she is without a breathing thing. She had some sort of surgery to get rid of that, so just a regular blue Benzite, no breathing apparatus. But anyway, she is kind of like the partner of Tom Riker, riding shotgun with him as he goes back and forth on these missions. And on one of these missions, they get picked up by none other than the Maquis. Captain Chakotay and the Spartacus pick them up with the intent of taking all of their medical supplies that are on board. Unfortunately, they just dropped all their supplies off, so they actually don't even have anything. So they basically take them on board as well. So now they have to... Well, basically, I think they explain the situation, and the situation is the planet Helena is under duress, right? They have this terrible infection that has been going all around the Alpha Quadrant, in the other books, and they don't have any way to stop it. So the Maquis are coming in to provide relief, and like I said before, there are continents that are separated by large oceans here, and one of them claims to be free of the virus, right? So that's the one they visit, and that's where they meet this Prefect Klain, and he takes a liking to Torres, and there's kind of like this little back and forth between them as she's trying to figure out information. And they do kind of work it out in the end, that this prefect Klain was the one that brought this down upon them, you know, kind of brokered the deal that brought the virus in. So, but again, there's a lot of interesting stuff that goes on with this IGI as well, this kind of group of, who shut out the lights? Anyway, here we go. This group of scientists that work to combine species and like kind of make the best person possible. They have these facilities all over the planet, but the facilities are kind of like just shells. And basically when you go into one of these facilities, you go into the special turbo lift, it goes down, and during that process, you don't even know it, but you're transported to like the main facility, right? So with everything that's going down, like people kind of are not really happy with IGI at this point. The Cardassians as well are coming in, kind of shutting down the planet. And listen, I'm making a mishmash of the story at this point, so we're going to just wrap it up here, right? So anyway, the Cardassians now at this point in the story don't want this to escape. So they have kind of got permission to cleanse the planet, right? So they know they have this fleet coming on board, right? That's going to wipe everything out. So now on the planet, in addition to the Hellenites, there are other aliens that are trapped there because of the quarantine. So there's some interesting characters, a Ferengi named Sheb, an Andorian character that comes in handy later and plays a part in the plan. And, Sheb actually I liked a lot. I like it when you get a fun Ferengi character that pops up in a book. But the Maquis kind of work with these people to discover how the virus came into being, and then also send for help. They're able to send for help, so when the end of the book comes around and I guess, I was trying to think, what is like the big action sequence of the book? And there is a very interesting part here too, where they, in the book, the people for IGI, basically, they kidnap Riker and Shelzane, and they infect them with the virus, right? So they're stuck on this desert island, and Riker kind of has to watch Shelzane die as she slowly succumbs to this virus, and then he escapes by basically busting into like a water tube and then riding it like a freaking water slide for miles and miles and miles until he can escape. And then he gets captured by Cardassians and eventually again rescued by the Maquis. And in the end, at the end of the book, Maquis, Captain Chakotay, propositions him to steal the Defiant, which is, what happens in that DS9 episode. So, a lot going on, a lot of fun, a lot of fun. I say a lot of fun, and it's a book about a planet dying from the plague. But there is a lot of interesting stuff going on, and even though the author thought it was very grim, it wasn't the grimmest thing I've ever read. There was still a lot of interesting action, and the heroes were able to come through and do some good in the end to save the day. So, you gotta like that, right? In the end, just happy to be reading and talking about Star Trek books. Look, this one is beaming away as we speak, because next we're going to be reading, we've got 5 of 6, Double or Nothing. This is the New Frontiers edition here. Not going to read anything on there, but you can see Picard and Captain Calhoun. So interesting to see where that goes. And also excited because it is a Peter David. It is a Peter David, which means we're going to have a good time with that. So we'll be starting that tonight for sure. And that's going to be the beginning of a big summer of Peter David, I think, as we work through a lot of the stuff that we have not read that I've got. So we're going to be getting into a lot of that. So as always, my friends, thanks for hanging out and listening as I talk about a Star Trek book for about 20 minutes. It's always been, it's always fun to sit here and talk and know that even if there's just one person out there that listens to it and gets something out of it, I feel that's really cool. And to be honest with you, I would do this if no one ever listened or watched anyway, because I just like to do it. But the fact that there are people out there that do like it and like it enough to keep coming back and listening again and again, I just think that's fantastic. So as always, my friends, live long and prosper. We'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good night.